that is the the United States and the United Kingdom, I beg your pardon. And the funding that comes to UNRWA also includes funding to our operations in Gaza. We are not at all out of the woods, of course, and it is very, very hard for us to know what will happen beyond the end of June with regards to the operations across the region of the agency, including those in Gaza.
And my second question is about Ain al-Hilwi camp in Lebanon. What's the situation there? Are you able to provide services as usual or the way you used to do in Ain al-Hilwi? Because there was a problem with the political committee, I think, in the camp between UNRWA and some parties in the camp.
Yeah, thanks, Nabil. I have just returned from Beirut last night, where I was accompanying the UNRWA Commissioner General on a trip there. We have had some disruption in the service delivery of the UNRWA services in the camp. We have also had a sit-in outside our compound in Beirut, where members of the Palestinian factions have closed our offices in Beirut for the past 6 weeks. Fortunately, the office has now reopened and the services have largely resumed.
Michelle Nichols.
Thanks, Juliette. Michelle Nichols from Reuters. Sorry, just to clarify again, you said that MAPS has said nearly 200 or around 200 were killed in the Israeli strikes in Rafah on Sunday. That's right?
Yes, this is according to Medical Aid for Palestinians, yes.
Okay, great, thank you. And what can you tell us about the incident today that appears to have killed more than 20 people? What does UNRWA know about that? And then, you know, what's left to distribute at the moment in terms of aid, given there's so little getting in? Thank you.
Which incident, Michelle, today? Which one are you referring to?
I think it was
I think a couple.
Yeah, Al-Mawasi. There was about 21, I think, was the last test though.
Yes, we've only seen reports on Al-Mawasi that we haven't been able to confirm. But to say that these reports are testament to the fact that no place is safe in Gaza, that no one is safe in Gaza, that no one is spared in Gaza, that there is certainly no so-called quote-unquote humanitarian or safe zone in Gaza. If we get more information on Mawasi, Michelle, we will send an update. And the second question is on what's left to distribute. Not much. I mean, we've run out of food very early on when the military operation started. We're getting very, very, very little humanitarian supplies into Gaza. And I think in the briefing, I covered why we're not able to pick up those humanitarian supplies. And we're running out of medicines in UNRWA clinics and pharmacies. And in just over 3 weeks to the south of Gaza, and I think it's important to say just to the south of Gaza, the UN has been able to pick up just over 200 trucks, which is not at all enough, because normally what Gaza needs is 500 trucks, and it should be a combination of commercial supplies and humanitarian supplies. So what we've got right now is in just over 3 weeks is 200, just over 200. We have this dashboard that we track the data on the trucks that you're welcome to consult. It's on the UNRWA website.
And sorry, just one last quick follow-up. Egypt said they didn't want to reopen Rafah because it was too dangerous for humanitarians on the Gaza side. Does UNRWA agree with that?
Look, what I do know is that the Rafah crossing has not opened yet, and those very, very little amounts of humanitarian supplies are only coming via the Kerem Abu Salem or Kerem Shalom crossing that connects Israel with southern Gaza.
Okay, Judeshi.
Hi, Juliette. This is De Zhishu with China Central Television. Just now you said the Commissioner General of UNRWA, when he described the Knesset move, he said it's outrageous. Can you elaborate why UNRWA think that's outrageous? In what way that would impact the operation of UNRWA? And second, you just mentioned in about 3 weeks, there are just over 200 trucks get into Gaza. The UNRWA has already suspended its operation in Rafah's area. Do you feel like there might be more suspensions for UNRWA on its humanitarian operations? Thank you.
Okay, thanks, and good to see you again. Look, we have not suspended our operations, just to be accurate. We have suspended the food distribution in southern Gaza because we simply ran out of stuff to give out to people, food stuff, right? But we have continued our operations. Our operations are ongoing. We continue to provide primary health care as one example to the communities in need. We have opened mobile clinics in places like Al-Mawasi, also to respond to the needs of the population in that area. So we have not suspended our operations. What we are saying, however, is that the humanitarian space is shrinking by the hour, by the day, because of all these restrictions that are imposed on the humanitarian community. On the Commissioner General describing the decision outrageous is because this is the last straw in a series of accusations, allegations, outrageous in that sense, against the agency, which is the beating heart and the backbone of the humanitarian operation in Gaza, which is an agency that has been for more than 7 decades providing human development services to one of the most deprived communities in the world right now, the Palestine refugees. So this is why he called it outrageous. And I can send you also a transcript from the briefing, the press briefing that he did in Beirut yesterday. There's also a video I can send to the colleagues in the spokesperson's office if you'd like to know more.
Thank you very much.
Abdulhamid Saad.
Thank you, Juliette. This is Abdulhamid Siam of the Arabic daily Al-Quds Al-Arabi. First, if you can tell us more about the situation in Jabalia refugee camps. Do you have people there trying to distribute anything? And if you can give us more details about the latest development in Jabalia refugee camp.
Okay, thanks, Abdulhamid, and good to see you as ever. Look, the latest that we have on Jabalia is that since the 6th of May, when there was also further expansion of the Israeli military operation in the area, is that there's give or take 100,000 people who were forced to be displaced in Jabalia. And UNRWA has teams everywhere across the Gaza Strip, including in Jabalia camp, but obviously with the recent expansion of the military operation, the restrictions and ability for our staff to deliver humanitarian assistance in the area is very, very limited, and we also have very little supplies humanitarian supplies that come into northern Gaza. You see the Israeli authorities have banned UNRWA in March from sending humanitarian convoys to northern Gaza. The last time that UNRWA was able itself to deliver a humanitarian convoy with food to Gaza was on the 29th of January. That was 4 months ago.
Thank you. Regarding the countries that resumed funding for UNRWA, you said just only 2 did not resume, the UK and the US. How did you manage with is there big deficit now in the budget? Can you sustain yourself to the end of the year, or still large shortages in the budget?
We're only able so far to operate until the end of June. It is very, very difficult for us to have any forecast on what's going to happen beyond the end of June.
Taking into account that 14 countries resume funding, that means they didn't believe in the allegations. So the allegations Israel launched against UNRWA had been proven untrue. yet Israel is going too far to declare UNRWA as a terrorist organization. Can you talk about this paradox?
What is the question, Abdulhamid?
The question, as many, the world is believing that UNRWA is innocent of all these allegations, yet Israel is going too far to accuse UNRWA of being a terrorist organization. Can you address this
I think
dichotomy?
you need to ask the member states and the donors why they have resumed their funding to UNRWA. That's a question that you need to ask the donor countries. I also take a chance to say that there were several countries who have come forward who have not been donors to the agency before. That also includes countries from the region, like most recently Iraq and Algeria. And we've also seen huge global solidarity from individuals from around the world that came forward in support of UNRWA. So only since the war began, we have received over $120 million from private donors and individuals.
Okay, Kristen Salome.
Thank you. Kristen from Al Jazeera English. You mentioned an UNRWA facility was struck over the weekend. Can you give more details on that? And given what's happening in the Knesset, do you feel like UNRWA is being directly targeted by Israel? Can you tell us like what was in that facility? Was it being used? And how many facilities have been hit in the last week maybe or month?
Yes, thanks so much. I'm not sure I said that another facility was hit on the weekend. I think what I referred to is the attack that happened on Sunday that was quite close to an UNRWA facility. And that is the logistics base that UNRWA has in the area. So the facility was not hit on Sunday. But just to answer your question on the number of facilities that have been hit since the beginning of the war, it's over 160 facilities of UNRWA that have been hit since the war began. Some were directly hit, some were hit more than once, and overall there have been over 450 people who were killed. They were sheltering in UNRWA facilities when these hits have taken place. On the Knesset bill, like I said, this is the last straw, the last attempt in a number of attempts over the past months to dismantle UNRWA. UNRWA is the backbone of the humanitarian operation in Gaza, and it provides human development services to Palestine refugees around the region, including over 500,000 boys and girls that go to UNRWA schools.
Okay, Margaret Bashir.
Hi, Juliette. It's Margaret Bashir with VOA. Again, on this Knesset bill, if it is adopted, would that essentially mean that UNRWA is shut down in the territories and East Jerusalem, West Bank, all of it?
Yeah, thanks for your question. Look, I'm not a legal expert. There are several other colleagues who are looking into the what if. At the moment, we are not speculating.
Okay, Linda Fasula.
Thank you, Farhan. I have a question regarding the distribution of food. What portion of the Palestinians in Gaza, the civilians, what portion is given food, provided food by UNRWA versus, I've been reading that, various commercial trucks have been entering Gaza or have entered Gaza and food is being bought. So I was just wondering what portion of people are buying versus being given.
Okay, so a lot of people depend on UNRWA and other humanitarian organizations for their food intake. This is true because the private sector has very early on shut down. So the shops, the stores in Gaza have shut down early on because they couldn't replenish the supplies. So the entire population of 2 million people was forced to rely almost entirely on food handouts and other humanitarian assistance coming largely from UNRWA as the largest humanitarian organization working inside Gaza. On the commercial trucks, I don't have much information. I do know that there's been, according to reports that we're not able to verify, that there's been commercial trucks indeed crossing into Gaza. The question is, when these commercial trucks bring in food supplies, how will people afford those food supplies that are coming to the market? Because most people in Gaza don't have enough cash. There is a cash flow problem, or they simply cannot afford it, because we understand that the prices of these commodities are quite high and unaffordable for the vast majority of the community in Gaza. This is precisely why there needs to be more humanitarian supplies coming into Gaza on a regular basis.
Yes, in the back.
Thank you. This is Anas with Sky News Arabia. I was wondering, apparently the U.S. military suspending the mission of delivering aid through the pier across from Gaza's coast. Since we got to this point, do you have any assessment of how efficient was this idea, and how many trucks, tons of human aid have been delivered to Palestinians in Gaza? How do you assess the whole process since beginning till the suspension?
Yeah, thanks, Anas. UNRWA is not at all involved on the pier, so I do not have any information on what came through on the pier. What we've been saying is that any way that brings, any method, any way that brings in more humanitarian supplies into Gaza is very welcome. However, the cheapest, most efficient, most secure, fastest way to bring in humanitarian supplies into Gaza is via road and via the crossings that connect Israel with the Gaza Strip.
Has the UNRWA received any humanitarian aid from that pier, like through that pier?
We have not been involved in the pier.
All right, and
Just to add,
Yes.
it was the World Food Program that was the entity in charge of logistics once we received aid from the floating dock, and they said that they've received something on the order of 96 trucks worth during the time that the floating dock was functioning.
Yeah. Also, are you in touch with Biden administration in terms of funding the UNRWA, given that your office here in the U.S., especially in Washington, D.C., receiving a lot of donations from American citizens who are willing to give through UNRWA to the Palestinian people? Are you in touch with them in terms of resuming the funding through the U.S., and if you have any update on that?
Oh, absolutely. We are in touch with all our partners, and in the U.S. government is a partner to UNRWA. I think we should just to be accurate, there are two separate things. There is an NGO in Washington, D.C. that is called UNRWA USA, that primarily does fundraising through the private sector or the private individuals. So what I mentioned in an answer to one of the questions on the funding, the $120 million that came from individuals, some of it also came through the UNRWA USA work.
And one last thing.
Does that make sense?
Yes. One last question. If you have any update on the number of UN facilities, especially UNRWA facilities that have been targeted in Gaza, and the number of your employees, like an update number for both.
Sure. I think I just gave an update to the friend from Al Jazeera. 160 facilities since the beginning of the war. 160 UNRWA facilities have been hit. Some of them have been hit more than once. Some of them have been directly hit, some indirectly hit, and there's been overall more than 450 people who were killed while they were taking shelter in UNRWA facilities.
Okay, Edie?
Hi, Julia. Two follow-ups. First, can you give us an update on the extent of famine in Gaza? And secondly, is there any indication of when fuel is going to run out?
Yeah, Edith, thanks. On the famine, perhaps it's better to wait for the report that's going to come out from the IPC, which is the world experts on food security and nutrition. It's due to come out end of the month, and perhaps better to be in touch through Farhan with colleagues in WFP and FAO and others. What we're very, very worried about, Edith, is the situation in the south and whether we are going to see a repeat of what we saw in the north, including Gaza City, when it comes to levels of hunger and starvation. That is very, very much related to what I mentioned on the little humanitarian supplies, including food, available in southern Gaza. And the IPC will be able to tell us more, including about the situation in the south. Sorry, what was the other question?
Sorry, on fuel availability, running out.
Oh, yes. Yes, thanks. I beg your pardon, Edith. There is, on every 2 days, we are getting around 100,000 liters of fuel. I mean the humanitarian organizations. UNRWA picks that up on behalf of the humanitarian organization. This is just about a third of the daily needs. The daily needs are plus minus 300,000 liters. So we're getting 100,000 liters. That's by far not enough, and we're getting that every other day, not every day. So there needs to be a more regular flow of fuel.
Okay, Abdul Hamid, last question.
Thank you, Juliette. Again, this is Abdul Hamid. I want to ask you about the office in Sheikh Jarrah. Is it still closed? And what about the training center in Qalandia refugee camp, which was Israel ordered to close these to the headquarters in Sheikh Jarrah and the training center in Qalandia? Are they still closed?
Both open and both functional. The office in Sheikh Jarrah just closed for the 48 hours after the arson attack by Israeli youngsters who tried to set fire to the compound. And it reopened a couple of days later. And the office in the training center in Qalandia is open and operational. All our operations in the West Bank are on.
Thank you.
And I'd like once more to thank our comrade and our colleague Juliette Touma, spokeswoman for the UN Relief and Works Agency. And thanks for your very extensive.
Farhan, I think there's a hand up online. Do you want to take that?
A handout?
Up.
Oh.
Someone's raising their hands.
Who is that?
Yes, I can see. I think Farhan.
Is that? Okay. Yeah. Whoever it is, please log in. I can't quite see you.
Hi. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah. Hi, Juliette. Hi, Farhan. Thank you for the briefing, Juliette. I wanted to go back and ask you about the 200 casualty number that you have for the Sunday night attack. Have you been able to confirm these numbers with the Gaza Ministry of Health or any other group operating?
We received, Barnaz, thanks. Like I said, we received this number from an international organization, and that is Medical Aid for the Palestinians.
Do you have any other details on that number? So these are.
That's all I have for now. But what we do know is among those people killed, there were many women and children.
Because the number that we all had was 60 from Gaza Minister, so this is significantly higher than the number that was put
You might
out.
want to check with MAP UK because the source is MAP UK.
But this is a number that MAP gave to UNRWA?
Yes, that gave out, not necessarily to UNRWA. It
Today?
gave out.
Today?
Today, this afternoon, yeah.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Okay.
All right.
Farhan, I think there is Iftikhar Ali. I think he wants to say something.
Okay. Yeah. Iftikhar, are you seeking the floor?
Hello. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Just following up on Farhan's question, if this figure of 200 is confirmed, would this be, I know 36,000 Palestinians have been killed, but would you characterize it, if confirmed, that this is the biggest death toll in a single strike?
I don't know the answer to that, Iftikhar, and I think you better go back to the source, which is MAP UK, and throughout this war, there's been so many attacks on civilians, and what matters is that many people have lost their lives totally unnecessarily.
Thank you.
Is that it from the colleagues online?
I think so, Farhan.
Okay. All
Back
right.
to you. Thanks so much for having me.
Great. Thanks, Juliette. Take care. Good luck. Bye.
Bye. Thank you.